Fides et Ratio, it's arguably one of the most difficult works produced during the pontificate of Pope St. John Paul II. I first encountered this over a decade ago, and I've been reading and rereading it ever since, always with something more to learn and discover. Actively reading Fides et Ratio is a daunting but rewarding task. Contemplative reading is great, but leisure is hard to come by. These videos are an effort to help guide the reader to get the most out of reading this great book with realistic considerations about our limited time, effort, and energy. Given the serious difficulty of reading this book, why take up the challenge? Here's how I would try to offer encouragement. The relationship and the tension between faith and reason are at the heart of Christian life. Without faith, we starve the very life of the Trinity within us. But without reason, we fail to adequately live up to the call of our baptism, to know, love, and serve God. No one can love what they don't know. Likewise, no one can trust someone they haven't encountered and gotten to know at a deep and personal level. So it seems the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity that are given to us in our baptism require a complete and total gift of self by embracing the relationship between faith and reason and following Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the life. Reason without faith is meaningless, but faith without reason is like contraception in the spiritual life. It becomes all about pleasure and cutting off that very part of ourselves needed to produce new life. This highlights the tension between faith and reason that exists because of sin. Sin dims the intellect. In other words, it makes us stupid. Sin makes enemies of faith and reason. When sin complicates and distorts this relationship, like it complicates and distorts any relationship, it darkens faith, making it mere superstition, while it freezes reason, making it cold and indifferent to the dignity of the human person. Sin's effect on faith and reason has plagued the life of the Church throughout its history. Competing views on this relationship have been the cause of great confusion, conflict, and division. Pope St. John Paul II took up the task of exploring the relationship between faith and reason in his encyclical letter, Fides et Ratio. This work was born out of Pope St. John Paul II's deep insight and understanding of the history of ideas, but it was also born out of his deep love for Christ and his own personal struggle to be reconciled to God in both faith and reason. No matter where you are in the spiritual life or the intellectual life, Fides et Ratio has a great deal to offer. Anyone who takes the Christian life seriously at some point has to deal with this tension between faith and reason. Why not seek the guidance and wisdom of one of the great saints of our age? Okay, so you've decided to plunge into the deep and to take up the task of reading Fides et Ratio. Before you read this great book, and really before you read any great book, it's crucial to take some time to think about the book before you think through the book. Thinking about a book requires two things. One, that you come up with realistic goals before you read. And two, that you take your current background knowledge and understanding of the topic and apply it to the main question of the book. The goals of reading are as varied as the people who read. With reading, much like any task, the clearer the goal, the more effective and engaging the activity. What is your goal for reading Fides et Ratio? What do you hope to learn? Take the time to be specific, to be clear, to be concrete, and to be concise. Great goals are carefully considered, written down, and used to evaluate our activity. Once you have great goals, they become the fuel for reading. They give you something concrete to work toward, and they help you to more actively engage with the task at hand and get more out of your activity by connecting it to interests and values that are relevant to you. In other words, it makes the activity more relevant, thus increasing your focus, attention, and memory. A second way to think about a book before thinking through a book is to think about what you currently believe about the relationship between faith and reason. Actually, take some time to consider it and write down an answer to the big question: what is the relationship between faith and reason? A word of caution here: actually write it down. The brain plays tricks on us when we don't. So, a silly example: let's say we're reading the book, What is 2 plus 2? And we take some time to consider, I know, it's 5. And when we read the book and we encounter the answer of 4, our brain tricks us into thinking that we believed it was 4 the whole time. It causes us to misremember our initial answer. We think we knew all along when in fact we most certainly did not. The big problem is that we tend not to remember the actual answer when this happens. Externalizing our thinking by writing it down forces us to clarify what we think ahead of time and to concretely apply that to what we read and encounter. It allows us to experience wonder, surprise, and even joy when we do actually encounter the answer. Just as hunger is the best spice, great questions that come from our background understanding of the topic make us hungry for the answer while we read. The ability to ask great questions while we read is the key to being a more active and engaged reader. Okay, so let's recap. In this video, we explored some of the reasons to read Fides et Ratio. We learned about the importance of thinking about a book before we think through the book, and that there are 2 ways to think about a book: having realistic goals for your reading and applying your background knowledge and your current understanding to address the main question of the book. Your goals for reading should be specific, clear, concrete, and concise. Great goals are essential to being a more present and active reader. And in fact, great goals can help us to be more engaged with the task of reading by evaluating how well are we reading in the moment. Thinking about the book also requires that we put pen to paper and that we clarify our current understanding and background knowledge of the topic. The 2 parts of thinking about a book before you think through a book make for richer and more enjoyable reading. So I'm going to give you 2 challenges before watching the next video. Challenge 1: write down some goals for reading Fides et Ratio. What do you hope to learn? Again, be specific, be clear, be concrete, and be concise. And the second challenge: put pen to paper. Write down your answer to the big question: what is the relationship between faith and reason? I hope you will continue to join me in trying to get the most out of our reading of Fides et Ratio while being realistic about our limitations in time, effort, and energy. Although reading this work presents quite the challenge, be courageous and take to heart the words of Pope St. John Paul II. Be not afraid. Until next time, be well and do good things.